groups because they are considered informational. But did you guys read this thing on
those
Twitter?
Are the ones I get, so we're still getting those? Okay.
On Twitter, though, that, you know, when if you're on Twitter and you say, oh, I want to find my friends in my phone book, Twitter was actually getting all of those numbers, all of your contacts, and keeping them. Ooh. So now there's new rules. That's in the LA Times today. It's interesting.
Well, Facebook has all your information, and they basically own it.
Not mine.
They own you, Steve.
Not mine.
Facebook owns you.
Well, you're covering them.
No.
You're going.
Are you going?
I'm going.
I'll be outside.
I get to go to the Vanity Fair party.
Wedding that felt more like a Hollywood premiere than a ceremony. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez did not retreat into privacy. Instead, they turned the next chapter of their love story into a European spectacle, moving effortlessly from palaces to nightclubs, from candlelit dinners to neon-lit dance floors, and every step was followed by flashing cameras and whispers of awe. Because this was not just a honeymoon, it was a statement of power and passion. The kind of whirlwind only a billionaire and a media star could stage their journey, carried them from Venice to the Balearic Islands, where nights stretched into dawn and music drowned out the weight of the world. In one club in Ibiza, Lauren danced. In a red glow, her silhouette commanding the room with Bezos close behind and their team forming a protective circle, while other guests watched in disbelief that the richest man on earth and his new wife chose to lose themselves in the beat-like. Any couple in love? And if that was not enough, days later, the scene shifted again, this time to the sea, where a $500 million super yacht became the floating stage for a double date with Leonardo DiCaprio and his model girlfriend Vittoria. To ready a meeting of wealth, glamour, and fame anchored against the Mediterranean horizon. And as onlookers whispered about the money, the connections, the sheer spectacle, one question kept rising: what comes next for a couple who has already turned their wedding into legend and their honeymoon into a rolling European carnival after the spectacle of Venice, where Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez sealed their love story in front of the world with a wedding that looked more like a movie premiere. Than a ceremony, they did not simply fade into the background. They moved forward as if their marriage was the opening act of something far larger, and Europe became their stage. Their path through the summer was not just a vacation, it was a declaration. Of lifestyle, of influence, of the kind of story only a handful of people on Earth could ever live, from gondolas drifting through Venetian canals to yachts anchored in turquoise waters. The newlyweds carried with them the glow of a couple determined to show that their love was unstoppable, and unstoppable love has a rhythm that finds its way to the dance floor. It was in Ibiza that the image crystallized. Lauren Sanchez bathed in the red glow of the nightclub, moving with a freedom that caught the eye of strangers and cameras alike. Jeff standing close enough to guard, but relaxed enough to let her own energy fill the space. Their team forming a circle to protect them while still giving them room to exist like any other couple in love. Except, of course, nothing about this couple was ordinary. The richest man in the world, and a media personality who had already lived many lives before finding this chapter together, they became the centerpiece of whispers that stretched across the internet. Because in that nightclub moment, surrounded by music and strangers, they looked less like untouchable icons and more like people who had chosen to lose themselves in rhythm and intimacy. And yet their presence reminded everyone that this was not just a honeymoon, it was a cultural headline. The summer of Bezos and Sanchez carried an energy that seemed to build each day, because when they were not being filmed inside neon-lit clubs, they were sailing aboard a $500 million super yacht anchored against Mediterranean horizons. A ship that was not just a vessel, but a symbol of scale, the kind of floating kingdom that announced wealth, power, and exclusivity long before its owners even stepped onto the deck and on. One of those days, they were joined by Leonardo DiCaprio and Vittoria Ceretti, a pairing that blurred the lines between Hollywood glamour and billionaire influence. The yacht became the stage for a double date that ignited speculation across social media. What do these meetings mean? How close are these worlds of entertainment and empire, and how much of this is friendship, and how much of it is alignment? Whispers turned into conversations about power, couples shaping not only culture but perhaps the future of industries, and every appearance fueled more curiosity. Because with Bezos and Sanchez, nothing seemed casual. Every move, every dinner, every smile seemed like a choice. But what fascinated so many was not only the spectacle, it was the humanity hidden beneath the spectacle. Jeff Bezos, who had spent decades building an empire of logistics, Technology and ambition rarely appeared in public as someone carefree. Yet here he was on dance floors, on sunlit decks, smiling in photographs, with the woman who had become his partner in life, and Lauren, whose career had always revolved around energy, motion, and presence, seemed to thrive in the spotlight not only as a companion to one of the richest men alive, but as a figure of her own. Charisma. Her laughter became a motif of this European summer captured in clips that spread quickly across gossip sites and entertainment feeds, and every time they were seen together, there was a duality at play: the impossibly wealthy untouchable status and the surprisingly human display of affection and joy. Their journey through Europe could have been kept private if they wished to vanish into islands and villas. No one would question it. Yet they appeared instead in places where cameras were expected, in cities and clubs where stories would spread. This choice made their honeymoon not simply personal, but cultural. It became a narrative consumed by millions who will never set foot on such yachts or inside such clubs. And that very distance is what made it compelling to watch. Because the story of Bezos and Sanchez was not just about two people in love. It was about aspiration, curiosity, and the collision of love with extraordinary wealth. It was about what happens when romance is magnified by billions, when intimacy becomes a headline, when marriage becomes not the end of a story, but the prologue to a new one. The world saw them at Venice, then Ibiza, then back again to Mediterranean waters, each setting carefully stitched into a broader tale. And as the summer stretched on, questions began to grow louder. What is the meaning of this public display? Are they reshaping the image of what it means to be wealthy? And in love, are they writing the blueprint for power couples in the 21st century? Or is this simply two people enjoying a life they built separately and then merged together, no matter the answer? The curiosity only deepened because every time they appeared, it sparked conversations not just about luxury, but about identity, about what it means to find joy at the highest level of success, and about whether love looks different when the backdrop is castles, super yachts, and nightclubs. And Ibiza itself played a role in this story because the island has always been a crossroads where the famous blend with the ordinary, where music becomes the universal language, and where nights can stretch forever. The image of Lauren in that club moving freely under red light with Jeff nearby became an anchor point of fascination because here was a billionaire stepping into the same rhythm as everyone else, even if guarded, even if watched by teams of staff, and for those who saw it, there was a strange balance between relatability and unattainability. Because who has not lost themselves in music, who has not laughed and danced with someone they love, but who can do it under the gaze of the world while sailing away the next morning on a $500 million ship? This tension kept audiences hooked. The familiar wrapped in the impossible, and when Leonardo DiCaprio entered the narrative, it only added to the intrigue because DiCaprio himself has been a symbol of Hollywood excess mystery and allure for decades, and the sight of him sharing a yacht evening with Bezos and Sanchez turned whispers into storms. What does it mean when two cultural icons from different worlds merge their circles? Is it mere coincidence, or the birth of alliances yet to be revealed? Some suggested it was friendship, pure and simple. Others speculated about deals, projects, connections, still unspoken. Whatever the truth, the image of that gathering spread like fire because it merged three layers of fascination: the billionaire, the media star, and the eternal movie, idle together on the same deck with the sea as their witness. And so the European chapter of Jeff and Lauren's story unfolded not quietly, not discreetly, but as a moving headline. One that seemed to grow more elaborate with each sighting, one that kept fans, critics, and followers alike asking not only what would come next, but what it all meant. And perhaps that was the genius of it all, because the spectacle was not only for them, it was for the world that watched, and the world could not look away. As the summer rolled forward, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez showed no signs of slowing their European journey, became less about destinations and more about moments that revealed who they were together, and every moment seemed designed to capture attention. Whether intentional or not, Venice had been the prologue. Ibiza was the beat and the yacht became the stage, but part of the fascination came from the way these stories overlapped with the culture of celebrity itself, because when Bezos and Lauren stepped into these spaces, they were not just individuals in love, They were symbols of something larger. Jeff, the architect of a global empire, and Lauren, the embodiment of charisma, ambition, and reinvention. And together, they created an image that was both aspirational and unreachable, a kind of fairy tale with steel and fire, instead of castles and dragons. And as they drifted between US shores and European hideaways, whispers about them only multiplied. Online debates broke out about whether their love was a private passion or a public production. Some claimed it was pure joy on display. Others suspected it was a calculated script written for influence. But the truth seemed to live somewhere in between. Because no matter the speculation, one fact remained clear. They looked inseparable, and their laughter carried louder than any headline when they appeared with Leonardo DiCaprio and Vittoria Soretti. The narrative widened even further. Now it was not just about love and wealth, but about circles of power colliding Hollywood billionaires, media stars, models, each carrying their own aura. And when they gathered on that $500 million vessel, it was more than a dinner, more than a date. It was the merging of cultural currents, and the public could not resist asking what lies beneath these meetings. Are they bonding over art and films, over philanthropy, over global ambitions, or simply over champagne as the waves rocked beneath them and the Mediterranean? Moonlit their table, the speculation felt endless, and as if to heighten the drama, each new sighting arrived like a carefully timed chapter. First Venice, then Ibiza, then the yacht, then whispers of return trips across the Atlantic. Each one reminding the audience that this was not a fleeting summer. This was a saga unfolding in real time. And it made people wonder what comes next, because if marriage was only the beginning, then what would the middle look like for a couple who already live at the peak of visibility and wealth? Would they continue to turn each city into a stage, each dinner into a headline, or would they eventually retreat into privacy, leaving the world to speculate forever on what they had witnessed? For now, the journey pressed on with curiosity as its fuel and love as its center, and every day seemed to promise that the story of Bezos and Sanchez was far from finished. As their journey continued, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez began to embody not just the role of newlyweds, but the role of cultural figures whose every appearance seemed to ripple outward through headlines, gossip blogs, and social media feeds. Their presence in Europe was no longer simply about leisure. It was about spectacle, about the way. Love, when magnified by billions of dollars and years of public fascination, transforms into something bigger than a private relationship. Each new sighting fueled another round of questions and speculation. Were they consciously writing a new chapter of billionaire mythology, or were they simply two people unwilling to hide their happiness from the world? Whichever it was, the result was the same. Audiences everywhere leaned in, hungry for details. The color of Lauren's dress, the cut of Jeff's shirt, the name of the yacht, the location of the nightclub. Every tiny detail mattered because each detail felt like a clue in a larger story, one that blended romance, wealth, and power. And when photographs emerged of Lauren laughing under the Mediterranean sun, while Jeff looked on with a rare softness, the narrative deepened further. These were not just curated appearances. They were glimpses of something more personal, and yet always framed by the grandeur of the stage on which they lived. Ibiza itself played backdrop not just once, but repeatedly, its reputation as a haven for celebrities and music lovers, aligning perfectly with their desire to be seen and yet to lose themselves in rhythm. At the same time, Lauren dancing in the red light with abandoned Jeff near enough to show both affection and protection. The image etched itself into memory not as a single night, but as a symbol of the freedom they had chosen together. And then the yacht returned to the headlines, the $500 million masterpiece floating like a city across the waves became the setting for moments that blurred the boundary between private indulgence and public fascination. When Leonardo DiCaprio and Vittoria Coretti stepped into the story, it transformed. Again, from honeymoon adventure into a cultural summit, a rare glimpse of worlds colliding, billionaires, Hollywood stars, models, influencers, all intersecting on a deck above the Mediterranean Sea. And though cameras captured only fragments, the imagination of the public filled in the rest. What conversations were unfolding? What alliances might be forming? Was this simply celebration? Or was it strategy beneath the laughter and champagne and sunset? The questions only grew louder, and as the yacht slipped, From one coastline to another, the saga of Bezos and Sanchez expanded further. A narrative not contained by a single location, but drifting across borders and time zones, leaving behind the same question, echoing over and over what comes next for the couple who already turned their wedding into legend and their honeymoon into myth. By the time Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez reached the later stages of their summer escape, it had become clear that this was no ordinary honeymoon. This was a moving epic one that stretched across countries, across oceans, across the very definition of what love at the highest level can look like. Every appearance felt like another chapter sewn into a larger tapestry. The glow of Venice had not faded it, had simply shifted into the pulse of Ibiza, into the glitter of nightclubs, and the thrum of electronic music into the glisten of Mediterranean waters that carried their $500 million superyacht from one coastline to another. And what captivated the world was not only the extravagance, but the way intimacy and spectacle kept intertwining. One moment, Lauren was dancing with abandon, her body illuminated in crimson light, while Jeff hovered protectively near her. Another moment, they were laughing under the Mediterranean sun, clinking glasses with Leonardo DiCaprio and Vittoria Coretti. And yet another moment they were seen strolling quietly hand in hand between destinations, as if the world had melted away and it was just the two of them. And because each of these fragments was captured, whispered, shared, amplified online, the story began to take on a mythic quality. People no longer asked simply where they were going. They asked what it meant. Was this the blueprint of a new cultural dynasty? Was this love story destined to reshape how the world imagines power couples in the 21st century? The speculation only deepened with every photograph because behind the visible wealth and the undeniable glamour there was also the sense of two people who had chosen to live boldly to dance, when they could have hidden to sail openly, when they could have vanished into privacy, and that choice kept the audience hooked because it suggested more chapters were waiting to unfold, more destinations, more encounters, more nights where love and legend blur together into the kind of tale that keeps people watching long after the music fades.